Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is a Shabbat that we have a double portion of two parashot, and the two parashot speak about the overall theme. Parashat Tazria-Metzora both speak about purity and impurity in different ways. So I want to dedicate today the class to the idea of purity and impurity. People don't really understand that concept. What does that mean, purity? It means that I'm clean? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that if you kind of want to paint it in broad stroke, it would be clean would be the body, pure would be the soul. So how do you clean the soul? What do you do in order to clean the soul? So we'll go through this mechanism, and you'll find amazing things that the Torah teaches us about how to conduct our lives. So the body and the soul are the two parts that in creation we already see, right? God created the heaven and the earth. So heaven is the spirit and earth is the body. So he created those two concepts already imprinted in the creation. So we have those two principles. The body, nobody has to explain to us the body, because we are reminded every day, every moment of the day, of our body. We can touch it, see it, smell it, all this stuff. No problem. The issue here is, how do we identify the soul and how the spirit in our lives? And so fast forward a little bit from the creation of heaven and earth to the creation of man. So when God created man, he created man in the same form. He took the physical, the earth, and made a body of a clay body, and then injected his breath in it. And then the Torah tells us that this is when the human being became a living person, a living human being. Not when the clay was there, but when the Spirit of God was injected into it, which means that the soul, the spirit, is the animating force of a human being. Now, the interesting thing about the Aramaic translation, it says that then when the text tells us that the human being became a living person, the translation says that it became a speaking spirit, ruach memalela, which means that the essence of a person is its soul, the spirit. And not only that, how does it manifest itself? In the speaking. We are a speaking entity. There's the inanimate object, we have the plants, the animals, but then we have the speaking. So we are a speaking animal. So we have a language with words and with letters. Those who love animals would say, well, but they have languages, they communicate. True, they communicate, but they don't have the ability to form words and letters and send each other facts. So they the idea of the speaking is the essence of the human being. And fast now forward to our parasha in the book of Leviticus 12, it tries to tell us that when you come in front of God, when you are worshiping or you work in the temple, you have to be pure. So what is pure? Pure is to know how to clean your soul. The soul was the breath of God. So it's pure. So don't soil it. So soiling the soul, so to speak, is through speech. So things that we do in our speech determine if we are pure or impure. And that's what our rabbis teach us, that purity and impurity is in the hand of, literally, in the hand of the mouth. Like the mouth has a hand somehow, because we think that the mouth, the breath, is just wind that we blow out of our mouth. But it's not. It has the power to actually kill, right? The expression of loose lips sink ships. So in Hebrew, the expression is life and death is in the hand of the mouth. Chaim u'mavet beyad halashon. So now we have this idea of purity. Then we'll get more into what this means, but it means that life and death somehow is connected to our mouth. We create life and death through the mouth. It may sound like a detached idea. Where did you get that idea? Well, where did I get this idea? I got this idea from creation itself. God speaks creation into being, right? He says 10 times, let there be, let there be. It's actually 9 times, but the Talmud says when God created heaven and earth, that itself is a speech. So 10 utterances of let there be, and we have the world. So God spoke the world into being, which means that we have the same ability to create reality through our speech. We are God's co-creators through the speech, because that is where God channeled himself through us. That's the connecting force, because physically God is not physical. So we're not connected to God that way, but we are connected to God through the speech, the spirit, the soul. So, okay, we've established this idea. Now, we'll start reading the text in our parasha, and we'll see something that may not necessarily seem to connect to this idea of the speech right away, but we'll explain how it's connected. So in Leviticus 12, it is the beginning of Parashat Tazria. We have 2 parashot, short parashot today. So the first one says, speak to the Israelite people thus, that God spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people and say, when a woman at childbirth bears a male, she should be impure 7 days. She shall be impure at the time of her condition of menstrual separation. Okay, so it's telling us that when a woman gives birth, she is impure, and she's impure just as she's impure when she's menstruating. So what is that? How is this all connected to what I was just saying about the soul, the breath, This seemed to be very physical. So this is where another element comes in. So we have the breath. We have the something that is not physical, right? The metaphysical aspect of our being. Clearly, and this has been talked about many times around thinkers and rabbis. What's the difference between a person that just passed away and a living person? The breath, exactly. Because everything else is there. The eyes are there, the ears are there, but the person can't see, can't hear. Why? Because it doesn't have the breath, the animating force. The question is, where does this animating force live in this body, in our being? Where is it? Where is it?
Are you asking?
I'm asking, absolutely. Where is it?
It's in the mouth. It's in the voice.
It's in the mouth, in the voice, but that's when we already breathe it out. There's some mechanism in our body that holds our soul, our breath. So we think of the breath as the inhaling and exhaling of oxygen, right? That's where the breath is. And where does this oxygen live? It lives in the blood.
Oh.
And the Torah tells us, right? God tells us, this is why kosher food, we have to let the blood out. We don't eat the blood because the Torah tells us a couple of times, don't eat the blood because the soul is in the blood. So the soul of an animal, the breath of the animal lives in the blood. So I have my own way of looking at it, how why it lives in the blood and not in our hair. So heaven, the spirit is like Abram Joshua Heschel wrote about it, and he said the breath without the body, the soul without the body is a ghost. The body without the soul is a corpse. So they need each other to live and do, right? That's the hand in the mouth. That the mouth is speaking, but the hand, it has a hand. So the body and the soul need each other. So the soul, why does it need the body? Because the soul has no form. It's infinite. It's the breath of God. So it keeps moving. It doesn't have a shape, a form. So it needs the body as a container to give it form. The body without the soul that keeps moving, that's what life is. Life is about movement. When you don't move, it's death. The body needs the soul not to be the corpse. So it's alive. So, but how do you bring heaven and earth together? Where the marriage, there's a famous story, right? And maybe Deborah can talk about it a little bit. The marriage of heaven and earth. So the marriage of heaven and earth, it's the bird and the fish that fall in love and they're looking for a place to live. Where do they live? If one constantly moves and one is an inanimate. So the blood is the compromise. It's a physical material, but it constantly moves. The minute it stops, it's death. So the soul that is from heaven, that constantly has to move, lives in the blood. because the blood is the only part of us that keeps moving like that. It's physical and it keeps moving. So this is where the marriage of heaven and earth happens. So which means that when we don't eat the blood because the soul is in the blood, really the point is that when we lose blood, we lose life. Okay? That's the progression of this mechanism of creation of life and the definition of what makes life in a human being. Here it tells us that when the woman gives birth, she loses blood, like when she's menstruating. That's the point. Every time we lose blood or we lose the potential for life, something that contains life, we are impure, which means that the paradigm of life and death in a human being is purity and impurity. So purity and impurity is a measure of life and death. So the more pure you are, the more living you are, or more the life you have, or more life that you have, the purer you are, and vice versa. So on that spectrum of life, the most impure would be the highest potential of life that is dead. So what would that be? It would be a dead human body, because human body, the human life, is the highest potential of life. Because not only do we have the physical, we have the mouth, the breath, which is the hand of the mouth that we can do and create with our soul. So that's the highest level of being. We're the pinnacle of creation. Therefore, when a human being dies, that the body is it says the avot tumah. So it's the summation of all impurity. That's why when you touch a dead body, you are now impure to the highest degree. And we will speak about how you come back from it. But that's the highest. Then on the other side of the spectrum of the living, the most alive you are is a human being who is perfectly pure, right? That's the highest. So to be perfectly impure is to be in the potential for life, to be able to give life forward. So when a woman lose blood, or for that matter, a man who has a emission that he was not supposed to have, that's impurity, because it was a potential for life that was lost. Okay, so mainly it's in the blood, and that's really explaining this whole idea of why we become impure when we lose blood. Okay, now it's telling us that if she gives a birth to a male child, then she's impure for 7 days. And then, of course, on the 8th day, it says the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And then it says she shall remain in a state of blood purification for 33 days. And she'll not touch any consecrated thing, nor enter the sanctuary until her period of purification is completed. So this is, in the Orthodox world, that is, or the traditional world, that's why women would not participate in synagogue minyan, because a woman might be impure and she would touch something pure in the sanctuary. Although it's really not about touching the object, because the object in the sanctuary do not really get impure, like the Torah itself. It's like the earth; it doesn't get impure. But in the temple, when there was a state of purity, today we don't have that state of purity, because everybody touched a dead person, or somebody who touched a dead person, and we don't have the mechanism of purifying from that. That's the red heifer, which we talked about another time. But the red heifer is the mechanism, of the ashes of the red heifer would be the mechanism to purify us from that. So we don't currently use that mechanism. So we are considered impure anyway. So it's not an issue for women to come to synagogue or sanctuary. But it also means that if they're in the state of impurity, if they touch a human being, another person, they become impure. So if a woman comes to the temple and touches a priest who is supposed to now administer the offering, then that priest becomes impure, and therefore they can't perform their duty. So that's why, of course, priests, Kohanim, can't come into a cemetery. And actually, in Jerusalem, in the time of the temple, they had a special path that went up from the Mount of Olives into the temple on the east side of the temple, to specifically make sure that they don't go into the cemeteries that were on Mount of Olives, because everybody wanted to be buried on the Mount of Olives, because the Messianic times, or Messiah, will come through the east, through the Mount of Olives, and everybody will rise. The dead will rise as he comes. So everybody wanted to be the first to rise with the Messiah. So that's why to be buried on the Mount of Olives is very desirable, and until today. So, but that's the idea of being impure until she regains the potential for life again. And it says, if she bears a female, she shall be impure 2 weeks. So it's double the period, as during her menstruation, and she shall remain in a state of blood purification for 66 days. So for 66 days, she can't touch any holy vessel. That's why, men and women separate in that week, or now they do 2 weeks, just to make sure she's clean or pure. So Orthodox couples separate 2 weeks of the month. They can't even touch each other. And there are cultures that the woman literally moved out of the house for 2 weeks. It's called in Ethiopia, they called it the red tent. That literally she went out of there was a book written a few years ago about it. They left for 2 weeks and stayed outside in order to keep the house pure. And I have a very good Ethiopian friend who experienced it in her childhood. When she was in Ethiopia before they came to Israel, the girls would move into that tent with their mother as children. So why, the question is, why double the time? So the Talmud says that because she is giving birth to a woman, or to a potential woman who would have to do the same thing. So she's paying for her impurity as well. So 33 days is the impurity period, but because she has a a female baby, then she is impure for her as well. So, like, the idea of eating for two, she's purifying for two. And at the end, and this is where it's all connected, at the end, on the completion of her period of purification for either son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest as an offering at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and at the entrance of the tent of meeting. She doesn't go in, because if she goes in, she would make the tent impure. So they meet her at the entrance of the tent, and they bring her offering in. And what is it? She brings a lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or turtle dove for a purgation offering. So the idea, of course, as the lamb is the baby, is an offering, we can understand that. But what does the turtle dove or the pigeon, the birds, have to do with this purity and impurity? And this is where we get back to this idea of speech. So the bird symbolizes the speech, that it flies. Once it's out of the mouth, it's gone. So it is when we commit sins that have to do with our speech, we bring a bird offering. If it's with the body, we bring the animal. So the soul is the bird, and the body is the other animals that we bring. All the lambs, the cow, and so forth, the bull. So for the body, she's thankful for the body, and then the soul is bringing the birds, because, and some of the commentators say that why does she have to redeem her mouth? Well, first of all, the purity is with the mouth, the speech, the blood that was lost, but also she might have said some bad words when the baby came out, because it's so painful that she might have released a bad word. And in many comedies and movies, we see that when you have the scene of the birth and the husband stands next to the wife, she keeps blaming him. It's your fault. I'm in pain now, and so forth. So you bring those birds to purify that. Okay, so now it's all connected that way. Now, fast forward, we have the idea of the leprosy. So Tazria, in that parasha, in that story, we hear about Tazria means she was conceived. So and then this whole process of giving birth. But then we have the Metzora. Metzora is someone who has leprosy. And the leprosy, what we call today leprosy, leprosy today is a physical disease, but Maimonides says that the leprosy that we talk about in the what we translate as leprosy, it's not even not necessarily the same word. Tzara'at is not a physical disease. It manifests itself physically on the skin, in the house, on the body, and so forth, when we'll just look at it. But it may not be, or it's definitely not a physical disease. It's a spiritual disease, something that has to do, and as we said, the spirit is connected to the speech, to the breath. So Metzora, the word Metzora in Hebrew, the Talmud tells us it's motzi ra, that you bring out something bad out of your mouth. Motzi ra. So if you speak badly, And again, there's a whole there are rules about what it means to speak badly about somebody. If somebody is a bad person and you need to warn somebody against them, then it's okay. It's not that clear that anything you say about another person it's bad mouthing them. But if you badmouth somebody, if you give them a bad name, then it's tzaraat. It's motzi metzora, the person who is the leper, motzi ra, motzi shem ra. He gave somebody a bad name. So how does that manifest itself? How do you see that? It says that when a person has on their skin a swelling, a rash, or a discoloration, and it develops into a scaly affection on their skin, it shall be reported to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons, the priest. Okay, so you don't go to the doctor, you go to the priest. So the priest then will determine if this is actually physical or it is the spiritual. That's that leprosy, the spiritual disease. And the priest shall examine the affection on the skin. If hair in the affected patch has turned white and the affection appears to deepen, then the skin, it is a leprous affections. So there's a way to know, and we're not going to go through all these signs that the Torah gives us, but the point is that if the priest determines that it is a leprosy, it means that the person spoke badly, did something bad about his mouth, and what he was trying to do. Usually when you speak badly about somebody, you try to isolate them, that people are not going to work with them, not going to come in touch with them. So the Torah is all about, the theology, of course, is all about measure for measure. If you did that to somebody, you will, or try to do it to somebody, you will then have the same fate. So somehow God gives you this spiritual disease that would force you to isolate. So it says, then they have to go into quarantine. And then on the seventh day, the priest shall conduct an examination. So 7 days is a good time. And last Shabbat in Shmini, we spoke about the idea of 7 and 8. 7 is the creation, and that's why we also mourn for a person for 7 days. Shiva, literally 7 days, because we are recreating the world without that person. So 7 days is enough to recreate or rethink your world. And if on the seventh day the priest shall examine the affection, and the affection has remained unchanged in color or in the disease has not spread on the skin, the priest shall isolate them for another 7 days. What does that mean? It means that the person, even though they were isolated, did not really reflect and did shuvah, repentance, for their sin, for their trying to isolate somebody, bad mouthing. So then they have to do another round, like repeat a grade. So then on that 7 days, again, the priest shall conduct an examination, and then if the affection has faded and has not spread over the skin, the priest shall pronounce the person pure. Okay, so if it faded and it did not spread, the person clearly did some sort of soul searching, literally and figuratively, and were able to somehow overcome this. And then after washing their clothes, they shall be pure. Then it says, but if the rash should spread on the skin, of course, the the person has to again report to the priest and go through the same process. Now, there is now another tzara'at or leprosy that could actually be not in the body of a person, but actually in the house. So if the house is affected, they call the priest, and the priest has to also determine the same way. Now, here you can't bring the house to the priest. The priest has to come to the house to see what is the condition. It could be just something that physical in the house. There's mold, and but the house is not impure, right? It's just there's a mold, and you have to clean it with whatever you use. But it's a physical mold. Now, if it's in the it could be in the house, in any it can be in the furniture, could be in the blankets, it could be in the walls of the house, and all that. So, for example, if when an eruptive affection occurs in a cloth or wool or linen fabric. Okay, so you start with the body, then what we wear, and then the furniture, and then the house, right? Everything is always concentric circles in Judaism, in the Torah. So what do you do if you see something like that? They shall be impure as long as when it's in the fabric, in the warp or in the woof of the linen or the wool, or in a skin or in anything made of skin. So because any knitted wool item or fabric will be put together with the warp and the woof. So it could be that only the woof is affected, or the warp, which usually is the evidence that this is not a physical disease, right? Because if it were physical, why wouldn't it affect both? Why only the warp or the woof? So actually in the Christian world, I don't know if you know about the what do they call the cloth, the cloth that they think that Jesus came, that was on him, and when he resurrected, that light came through it. I forget the place that it was in Italy that it was found. But when they examine it, they see that it affected only the woof of the warp. So I'm not sure which one. The what?
The Shroud of Turin?
Yes,
Turin.
Yes, Turin. So it's the of Turin. It's the shrouds of Turin. Yeah, so the shrouds of Turin. That's why they feel that that's also kind of a it's not a natural cloth, because of that it's only affected the warp of the woof. Okay, so then it's definitely a sign, right? Now, if the affection in the cloth or the skin, in the warp or the woof, or in any article of skin is it's green or red, it is an eruptive affection, it shall be shown to the priest. So there are certain signs that they knew that were not necessarily physical, and they had to consult a priest. And the priest, after examination of the affection, shall isolate the affected article for 7 days. So same thing as a person, you quarantine it, and then you see what happens on the 7th day. If it spread, then it's impure, and if it didn't, then it is pure. So if it's impure, what do you have to do? Because it's not like a human being that can repent. It's the cloth, whether warp or wool, in or linen or any article of skin, in which the affection is found, shall be burned. Okay, for it is a malignant eruption. It shall be consumed in fire. So why fire? Again, why not wash it in water? Because fire is the breath, right? It's the breath is like the fire. God appears in fire, the breath, the soul. So it's the fire. The body is the water, and the soul is the fire. Remember, we talked about last Shabbat. The fire wants to go up to its core, heaven. Water comes down and wants to come down to the body, the earth. So you burn it. So then it if a cloth, and now we're talking about the house. Okay, so what do you do if you have a house? But before that, when the leper, same thing as the impure woman, brings birds. Here it says, this shall be the ritual of the leper at the time of being purified. Once they are the priest decide that they are pure. When it has been reported to the priest, the priest should go outside the camp. If the priest sees that the leper has been healed of the scaly affection, the priest shall order 2 live pure birds, cedar wood, crimson stuff, and hyssop to be brought for the one to be purified. Again, the 2 birds that symbolize the breath, the purity and impurity, and especially here with the Metzora, as we say, he was bad-mouthing. The priest shall order one of the birds slaughtered over fresh water in an earthen vessel, and then shall take the live bird along with the cedar wood and crimson stuff and the hyssop, and dip them together with the live bird and the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. And then he shall then sprinkle in 7 times on the one to be purified, on the eruption of the effect of purification, and he shall set the live bird free in the open country.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah, that sounds like.
Well, it's Yom Kippur. I mean,
yes,
the lamb.
Exactly. It's like the Yom Kippur, the 2 identical goats, that one goes to and being offered to God, and one goes to Azazel. The only difference is that here the bird goes free. To Azazel, they push it over a cliff. So by the time it reaches the ground, it's gone too. So
I thought that he got free, the second goat, the goat that was.
Yeah, no.
Was
they push it over a cliff. So
I thought he had to live with the sins. That was no.
Yeah, it doesn't say in the
that was the whole that it carries the weight.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't say in the text itself that it necessarily died. It says that they send it to Azazel. So there's different ways to interpret what Azazel is, but yes. So one is brought as an offering, and one is sent off. So, which again, we can just talk about that for an hour. So I don't want to get too much into it, but it's at the bottom of this idea of having those two, one offered to God and one being released, is that our mouth or our choices, because on Yom Kippur it's the goat, right? So it symbolizes the body. What do we do with our body? What choices we make in our lives? So it tells us that you can make similar choice. The choice is in your hand. Your actions can be brought to God, or they can go to Azazel. Right? You can live your life dedicated to God, to holiness, or you can waste your life. So that's the idea. So here too, with the mouth, you can have a choice that you can dedicate your life, your speech. There's bad speech and there's good speech. You can use your mouth for good speech, for life, or for death. So same idea. And then on the 8th day, they shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, one of the lamb in its first year without blemish, 3/10 of a measure of choice flour with oil mixed in for grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And then the priest brings it to God, of course, as an offering, and so forth. Now, the last part of this whole purity and impurity that I want to look at is the house. So the house is an interesting idea, because what it means is that when we look at a house, it could be, of course, the physical entity, the walls and the roof, and you have a place as a shelter. But of course, on a higher level, a house is the house of God, is the sanctuary, is the relationship that we have with God, the tent of meeting. So the house of meeting with God. So when we speak badly, we can make the house that we live in, the relationship with God, impure. So the house really symbolizes the relationship with God. Before, the body and the cloth could symbolize the relationship between people, that you spoke badly about a person, but the house is a bigger idea. And there's a midrash, that beautiful midrash, that speaks about the house, when the house gets impure, then it's really the house of God, and that God will have to destroy the house, and then we go into exile, and then God will eventually rebuild the house. So let's read this part of the house, and then we can talk about it. So it says, when this is Leviticus 14 now, in the middle of the page, verse 34, it says, when you enter the land of Canaan that I give you, of course, this is God speaking to Moses, says, and Aaron, when you enter the land of Canaan that I give you as a possession, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon a house in the land you possess. Okay? So what's the difference in the language here? God says, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon a house in the land that I possess, which means, first of all, it's God doing it. So it's a sign from God if a house becomes an impure. In the body, it doesn't say that God put that sign. If a person became a leper, somehow it appeared on his body. But here God specifically says I will put the sign. So two things we can learn. First of all, it's a sign from God. And as we spoke, it's the relationship between man and God if the house is infected. But also it means that it says here only in the land. Because outside the land, when there's no holiness, there's no impurity. But when you live in a pure environment or a holy environment, purity and impurity matter. So, for example, if you have a dark article of clothing, if you get a stain on it, you may not even see it. But if it's white and you get even the little stain, you go to an Italian restaurant and you get a little bit of the stain from the tomato sauce, that's a big deal, right? So same thing. The land is a holy land. God wants to keep it pure. And the closer you get to Jerusalem and to the temple and the Holy of Holies, right, that's total purity. And if the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies somehow even a bit impure, he dies on the spot. That's why when he goes into the Holy of Holies, he is there's a chain. He's linked, tied up with a rope, because if he falls and dies, he can't go inside. They pull him out. So, as we said, it's like nuclear power plant. You have to be very careful with everything you do. So God says, I will bring the sign. And so you have to then realize that you did something wrong and you have to repent. So it says, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, something like a plague has appeared upon my house. The priest shall order the house cleared before the priest enters to examine the plague. Why does he have to clear the house? Because if the house is impure, then it affected all the furniture, the people in there, and then the priest doesn't want to be subjected to that impurity. Then the house, so there's nothing in the house, may become impure after the priest shall enter to examine the house. So first of all, just to have a precaution measure too, you clear the house for that reason, that if so the other things in the house won't get impure. But nonetheless, the priest comes in, and if when he examines the plague in the wall of the house is found to consist of greenish or reddish streaks, that appears to go deep into the wall. So there's something about going down, right? Going inside. And we can talk about that, but I don't want to go too much into it. But again, you have lowered yourself by speaking badly about a person or about, God forbid, God. So this is what happened. The priest shall come out of the house to the entrance of the house and close up the house for 7 days. So same thing as a human being. And then he looks at it on the seventh day. And if he sees that the plague has spread on the walls of the house, the priest shall order the stones with the plague in them to be pulled out of the house. Okay, that patch to be brought out and to be disposed of. The house shall be scraped inside, like you can treat it like mold. And the coating that is scraped off shall be dumped outside the city in an impure place. They shall be take other stones and replace those stones with them, and take other coating and plaster the house. If the plague again breaks out in the house after the stones have been pulled out and after the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest shall come to examine. If the plague has spread in the house, it is malignant eruption in the house, it is impure. So then what do you do with that? The house shall be torn down. So in the Midrash, it says that that house, the temples have become so corrupt and that they had to be torn down. And then the house shall be torn down, its stones and timber and all coating on the house, and taken to an impure place outside the city. So the whole house is condemned. Whoever enters the house while it is closed up shall be impure until evening. Whoever sleeps in the house must wash their clothes, and whoever eats in the house must wash their clothes. If, however, the priest comes and sees that the plague has not spread in the house was replastered, the priest shall pronounce the house pure, for the plague has healed. Okay, and then what do you do for this? To purge the house, he shall take 2 birds, cedar wood, crimson stuff, and hyssop. Again, the birds are the star here, because purity and impurity has to do with the mouth, the breath that lives in the blood. So all that potential life and death is in the hand of the mouth. If we corrupt that, we see signs of death in our body, in our houses, and we should be aware of that. And if we repent, it heals. If not, then it has to be quarantined again or be destroyed. And then it says, such is the ritual of every eruptive affection for skulls and for an eruption on the clothes or the house, for swelling or for rashes, for discoloration, to determine when they are impure and when they are pure. Such is the ritual concerning eruption. Okay. And then the Torah continues again about a man who had maybe nocturnal eruption or emission, and they have to be impure also, and they have to wash and go to the mikveh and purify themselves and come back. So that's the idea of purity and impurity. And it's a measure of life and death.